Friends, I'm Vitaly Portnikov. The NSA and CIA, according to the Wall Street Journal, found no proof backing Russia's claims of Ukrainian drone strikes on Putin's Valdai residence. U.S. officials speaking to the paper stressed Ukraine hit a different target miles from Putin's home. Thus, the Russian leader faced no threat. Earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump reposted an editorial from the New York Post, claiming Putin is now the only obstacle to ending the war in Ukraine. The paper's harsh editorial stresses the Russian dictator prevents Trump from achieving peace in Ukraine. And I remind you, Ukraine did its part. The New York Post also refutes Putin's claim of Ukrainian drone attacks on his residence and urges people not to believe the Russian leader's crocodile tears. Thus, after Trump's emotional reaction to the report of an attack on Putin's residence, which Putin himself told Trump about in their last call, comes a moment of truth. When professionals checked the Russian president's information, it became clear Putin was bluffing. Moreover, the Russian president wasn't interested in making the information credible. He didn't even stage, an attack by his own drones on his residence to show the incident actually happened. Adolf Hitler, in a similar situation, blamed Poland for attacking the Gliwice radio station. That was the pretext for World War II. He dressed his own SS men in Polish uniforms to make the Reich's provocation seem credible. Putin, it seems from his statements, sees himself as Hitler's devoted student. But he's a Hitler-lite, not even trying to make provocations believable, like the facts the Russian president cited in his call with his U.S. counterpart. Why did Putin do this? To stall peace talks. The Russian president was furious that Donald Trump was negotiating a peace plan with Zelensky and European leaders, planning to present agreements with the Ukrainian president and European leaders as joint proposals from the US, Europe, and Ukraine. In Putin's mind, it must be different. His aide Yuri Ushakov doesn't hide this. The Russians want to negotiate only with the Americans, agree with them on how the map of Europe and Ukraine's fate will look. And Ukrainian President Zelensky must simply listen to these decisions made by Trump and Putin, and agree by default. Ukraine shouldn't even be part of the discussion about its own fate. And since the US president can't agree with the brazen stance of Russia's leader and his inner circle, who helped Putin bluff in talks with Trump, they found a way to stall negotiations by accusing Ukraine of attacking the Russian president's residence. This, firstly, allowed Putin to simply ignore Trump's messages about his own agreements with Zelensky and to make it clear to the US president that after the attack on the residence, all these agreements are, so to speak, nullified. And now Russia can take a different negotiating position, the content of which the Kremlin does not disclose simply because the Russian Federation has never been inclined to any real negotiations to end the Russian-Ukrainian war. And, of course, in this situation, Putin had the opportunity to once again categorically emphasize that he is not going to contact Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Perhaps because he feared that during the talks between Trump and Zelensky, there might have been talk of a trilateral meeting between the American, Ukrainian, and Russian presidents. And for Putin to meet with the president of Ukraine as an equal partner in negotiations is to recognize the fact of the legitimacy of the Ukrainian state itself, which, obviously, is not part of his political plans related to the liquidation of statehood on Ukrainian soil today. And thus, with his story about the attacks on the residence, Putin hoped to convince Trump of a completely different course of the negotiation process, when the Americans will talk exclusively with the Russians and when economic relations between the United States and Russia will be independent of how many more years Russia's military actions against Ukraine will continue. But apart from the first emotional reaction of the US president, Putin achieved no real success. Experts started working, and they quickly found out that the Russian president, as has repeatedly happened in his disgraceful and inept political career, is lying. Although it seems to me that the word lie should be the name of this country, which has been ruled for 25 years by a protégé of the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation. After all, lying is the main content of the political culture of Russian security officers and all those who support them in the Russian Federation. It is a real kingdom of liars. Well, now the American administration can take a tougher stance on Moscow's further actions regarding the peace plan. And I don't think it's worth talking about the fact that Putin, through this bluff, managed to justify his unwillingness to continue negotiations on ending the Russian-Ukrainian war. Instead, we should think about how the pressure on the Russian Federation will develop in the coming months, when it becomes clear how unwilling Putin is to agree to silence the guns and missiles on Ukrainian soil. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe to it, subscribe to my social networks, to the channel on Patreon, which helps to develop these resources. Use the sponsorship function on YouTube itself. I wish you a happy 2026. Victory and peace. Good luck.